I entitled the chapter "The Role of the Translator" to differentiate it from the earlier chapters, which focus very much on translation as a text or as a form of communication.
Right.
Strange as it may seem, until relatively recently, translation studies had tended to overlook the translator, him or herself.
Yeah.
So this chapter shifts the focus very much onto the translator. It looks at the work of Antoine Berman and Lawrence Venuti. Venuti, whose work from the 1990s onwards has described the translator as being invisible in the translation culture of the United States and United Kingdom. So, you'd look at a book and you may not find the translator's name there. Translation wouldn't be considered a high status profession. The translator may not get copyright over their work. The review may not indicate who the translator was of a book.
Right.
So these are ethical questions in their own right, as well as other questions such as the textual choices by the translator, which may indicate their ideological perspective. May be. Peter Newmark, for example, described translation as a truth-seeking activity and profession.
Okay.
So the translator was working with a source text, creating something anew in the target text, but having to ethical choices to make there, and an ethical duty in many ways to the source text author.
And that sounds like it links back to a lot of earlier translation theories or theorists or people who try to conceptualize translation, the idea of getting to the truth and the dichotomy between word for word and sense for sense.
Certainly there are links back to the translation of the Bible, where areas such as faithfulness to what? Spirit, etc. were crucial, and where the whole edifice of the original depended on the supposed fidelity of the translated word.
Yeah.
And also, interestingly, Venuti's work links back to the work of the philosopher Friedrich Schleiermacher, which was described in chapter 2 as well, and whether the translator should bring the author to the reader or take the reader to the author.
And the fact that Venuti was writing in the mid-90s, it again shows that translation studies is quite a young discipline, but a discipline that's quite dynamic and changing.
It's always changing. There are new work all the time in different perspectives. Venuti's work has had enormous influence. He wrote Translator's Invisibility in 1995, the second edition in 2008, and it still has influence today. My particular interest is in the translation of Latin American literature into English from the 1960s onwards, the Latin American boom authors. And they used, at that particular juncture, there was much support from the United States, different institutions, Rockefeller Foundation, for example, what is now the Americas Society, supporting the translation of some of these books, partly for ideological reasons, to try to get some of these writers on board ideologically, and combat the success of the Cuban Revolution of the late 1950s.
Okay.
But also a genuine interest in developing links and understanding the cultures of the rest of the Americas. I think one interesting area is the reception of translation and the reviewing of translation, and the way that any description of a translation is, again, not just based on the text, the main body of the text themselves, but there's the prefaces, the glossaries, the footnotes, etc. create a whole edifice around the body of the text, which guides the interpretation, the reader's interpretation.
Right. And would those choices be made by the translator always, or does it vary?
It could very well be the editor. There's one example I found where a work in the 1960s was rewritten by it was a work from Brazil
Right.
that was rewritten by the publisher because it was too long and he felt it wouldn't be understood by the public.